On Wednesday in Philadelphia, police officers serving a warrant for a drug bust quickly found themselves in a standoff as their target for arrest barricaded himself inside a home on the north side of the city. Upon arrival at the home, officers were immediately shot at. 2 officers became trapped inside the building along with 3 civilians, and the drug bust suddenly became a hostage situation with gunfire exchange that wounded 6 officers, though all are expected to survive. A SWAT team was eventually able to extract the 2 trapped police officers and the 3 civilian hostages safely, and after 8 hours, the suspect was finally detained after his lawyer helped to negotiate his surrender.
When he comes out, he has his hands over his head, and I hear him shouting. Everyone can hear him shouting through my phone, which was on speakerphone, shouting, "Don't shoot, I'm coming out, don't shoot, I'm coming out."
Now, if you ask Blue Check Twitter, I've buried the lead. I've left out the most important detail. The suspect was armed with the ace of spades, cop kryptonite, the one ring to rule them all, an AR-15 assault weapon with hundreds of rounds to spend, making him all-powerful to fight over 100 cops single-handedly for hours. They were nearly helpless. Except it's not really that simple, of course. The cops obviously had ARs themselves. This wasn't simply a question of firepower. They could have had him dead in 5 minutes if that was the objective. With hostages inside the building and a daycare in the immediate area, the plan was to reduce gunfire, and so that's exactly what the cops did, trying to negotiate with the suspect while escorting some 80 children and many more adults out of the daycare to safety. Yes, the standoff was long, but that's not an indicator of being outgunned. That's an indicator of taking the time necessary to do a good job of protecting life and property, which the police did. They put themselves on the line with 6 of them hurt. But for there to be no serious civilian injuries and for the perpetrator to be captured alive after hours of gunfire, that's a job well done. But of course, instead of highlighting that job well done, this event immediately turned into political grandstanding. And actually, the term immediate might be inaccurate in this case. Too delayed. Before the suspect was even detained, while the SWAT team and the negotiators were still working to extract him from that house, before we had any of the necessary information to assess this case, Philadelphia Mayor Jim Kenney was already out in front of reporters preposterously blaming the NRA for the day's events and calling for more gun control as the solution.
Our officers need help. They need help. They need help with gun control. They need help with keeping these weapons out of these people's hands. Whether it's our 6 officers who were shot or it's some 15, 17, 20-year-old kid on the streets of Philadelphia who gets shot with guns that shouldn't be in people's hands. And if the state and federal government don't want to stand up to the NRA and some other folks, then let us police ourselves. Our officers deserve to be protected, and they don't deserve to be shot at by a guy for hours with an unlimited supply of weapons and an unlimited supply of bullets. So it's disgusting, and we got to do something about it.
And he wasn't the only politician to do it either. Elizabeth Warren and Cory Booker were on Twitter immediately saying the same thing before the facts were even in to assess what the legal issues in this case may be. And Kamala Harris was on CNN pushing her campaign gun plan.
Part of my focus on what we need to do around smart gun safety laws is recognize that we have to have more enforcement around gun dealers. 90% of the guns that are associated with crime are sold by just 5% of the gun dealers in the United States.
Did the NRA give this guy his gun? Did a dealer break the law in selling him a gun? Who knows? Who cares? Doesn't matter. Any opportunity to seize a little more power shall not be infringed, ironically. But beyond the bad form of leaping to conclusions without the necessary information generally, beyond the danger of trying to diminish your rights because of someone else's crime, these comments are deceptive and misinforming to the public. They leave you to believe that the law does nothing to prevent someone like this from being armed. Like this guy just walked into Guns R Us and bought that AR. No questions asked, 100% legally square. Like our legal system does nothing to stop people like this. Now that the facts have come out, it's clear that presentation couldn't be more false. The suspect's name is Maurice Hill. You'll be shocked to learn he has a lengthy criminal history prior to the standoff. He's had habitual brushes with the law his entire adult life dating back to 2001. In the early and mid-2000s, he committed several serious crimes including kidnapping, assault, attempted murder, as well as drug crimes on multiple occasions. In 2008, he was convicted on, yes, federal gun charges for illegally possessing 2 handguns as a felon, and he served 4.5 years in prison. Based on the arrest warrant that prompted this event, one would presume he has continued in his old ways since his release. This man is a felon multiple times over, which makes it entirely silly to call for more gun control in response to this case. Under no circumstance may a felon possess a gun in this country legally ever. He can't buy one. He can't sell one. He can't handle one. Not here, not there, not in his house, not with a mouse. And this isn't an issue of some states being more relaxed than others. This is federal law. And not only that, but any person who sells to him or gives him a gun in any way has also committed a crime, whether it's a shop or a private individual. We have to help our cops by making these weapons unavailable. They already are to this guy, and it did nothing to stop him. These guns are out there in massive supply. The parts to build them are out there in massive supply, and they don't require complicated tools or precision skill to assemble. You can't just erase the ability to build these weapons in circumvention of the law if that is the criminal's intent. Am I supposed to believe that a federal assault weapons ban would have resulted in this scene?
Sir, in case you are not aware, sir, please, sir, stop. In case you are not aware, your firearm is not of compliant configuration.
Ah, well shit, man, my bad. You know what? I don't have any 10-round mags laying around, so I guess I'll just be right out.
Thank you.
Oh, of course, man. No problem. Wow, so simple, so easy. It would help the police so much. Why don't we just do that? The mayor says he cares about helping police officers do their jobs, but he and most media aren't talking about the other key piece of this story, which is Philadelphia citizens interfering with police officers trying to do their jobs, harassing and borderline assaulting them. In the midst of the standoff, a large crowd was gathered, and some of these bystanders can be seen and heard chastising officers, shoving them, throwing garbage at them, and advancing on these cops in a physically aggressive manner. In the footage, you can see a daycare bus. I can speculate that's a vehicle for transporting some of those kids to safety, and that escort is what's being interfered with here. But I can't say that with certainty. A local reporter also says she witnessed this harassment of police.
I do want to mention something disappointing that I saw today. I did see a crowd taunting police in the middle of all of this.
She adds on Twitter that she was also personally harassed, but doesn't go into detail on exactly how. So just to recap, if you were to listen only to the mayor, you'd get the impression that this shooter obtained his gun legally and that we need a new law to cover this gap and solve this problem. In reality, the laws to keep guns out of this criminal's hands are already laws, and the mayor says nothing about people aggressively interfering with the enforcement of those laws. This guy blames everyone else for the problems in his city. It's Congress's fault for not writing ever more laws to stack on top of the existing ones. It's the state of Pennsylvania's fault for not letting him write his own gun control laws in his city.
This government, both on the federal and state level, don't want to do anything about getting these guns off the streets and getting them out of the hands of criminals.
There is no circumstance under which anything this shooter did is legal anywhere, Philadelphia and Pennsylvania included. In that case, how is it someone else's fault? Did the NRA rile up this mob to harass cops? Did obstructionist congressional Republicans interfere with police officers serving honorably to keep your city's children safe? At what point are these plainly illegal problems in Philadelphia your fault instead of someone else's fault? I presume you weren't elected to point fingers, Mr. Mayor. I presume you were elected to solve problems. And if helping police officers do their jobs is actually a priority, maybe mobs in your city harassing them on the job would be a good place to start instead of uninvolved political opponents who live hundreds or thousands of miles away. Thanks as always for listening and for supporting this channel always. Appreciate that thoughtful discussion down below and especially over on Twitter. That is at ML Christiansen. You're always welcome to coming out and chat in my live streams. Those are linked down in the description. Looking forward to it. Goodbye.